So I got a couple of replacement parts for this vacuum, which is the multi-floor animal ball. And there is the culprit right there. That is the broken lead from the wires that when you basically put it into the non-hose position, when you start rolling it on the ground and stuff like that, it should turn on the brushes, and the brushes just basically just stopped. So that's all that was. It was just basically a broken wire, so it just must have pulled a little bit too hard on it. So I can solder that back together and electrical tape it, and that'll be great. But I did already pull apart these switches. I put a multimeter to everything, and they all worked fine. This was a little bit more difficult because you have to get to this cover. I don't know if what I removed was totally necessary, all of the pieces, but I'll try to kind of reconstruct what I went through to get you to understand how to pull this apart, because it's a little bit difficult to get together and get it all popped together. I think this goes over or under. It kind of just came off on me. But you are going to need quite a bit of different screws. You're going to have some smaller Torx bits right here. I don't know if that's a T15 or T12 or I don't know what it is, but it's just, get yourself a multi-kit. You could swap. I did have to kind of get creative with figuring out how to get some of these things off. This is the ball on the one side, and it has this little tiny itty bitty cover that basically, if you look at this notch right here, when you put this cover back on it, it's just a simple cover. That's it, and it'll just basically snap into place if you just screw it in. And I used a little pry, like this little guy, and I just basically spun it until it just popped off. It was actually really easy, and if you notice that when you get in there, you can see that this will lock into place in one of this little groove, and then when you just spin the ball, it'll actually just pop this cover off. So it's not a terribly too hard thing to do, but you will not be able to get this ball off without that. The next thing is this right here just spins, and that's what actually connects the screw. So once this thing comes off, it's just like that other piece. You just spin it and it'll come off, but that cover is a little bit more, it's really kind of just, I guess it's to prevent people from messing with this thing. But that's basically how you get that off. That's the first thing you'll have to take off. And then the next thing that you'll have to do is you'll have to remove this cover plate. This cover plate had, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like 6 or 7. Yeah, 6 screws. And these are a little bit skinnier, but again, these are Torx bits as well. And they were the same size as these guys right here. It's going to be pretty intuitive, like what you need to take apart. You'll see that the cover itself, once it goes on there, only lines up in a specific way because it's got to have these like 3 platters that sit on there. And then once they sit on there, now this, I will tell you this, it's a little bit difficult to get these things assembled again, just because it has to be kind of either in the upright or different position, because these can kind of get all jacked up. So it's very difficult for me to hold the phone at the same time, kind of showing you this. But these 6 areas right here, those are going to be for the black screws that you take out. The ones that was a little bit more challenging, because all of my screwdrivers had this kind of bigger nub on it, and it was preventing me to get into this hole right here. It just, that nub wouldn't reach far enough. So what I had to do is I actually had to find a screwdriver with the adapter bit that didn't have that big nub on it, so I could actually get the screwdriver all the way in there, and that was a Torx screw that basically pulled that out. But once I was able to get that out, I was able to pull this down and see where the actual wires were connected, and then I was able to not have to remove that screw, but just basically swivel it away, and boom, that was our culprit. So it was just a bad wire. So I can just literally resolder that, and that thing should be working. I did buy a replacement head for that for about $100 on eBay. It worked right. I mean, it fit right on, but it didn't work. So hopefully I can send that back and get my money back for that, because it was never used. But unfortunately, if your brush stops working, sometimes it's not best to really take that thing apart. You can see if it's clogged up and everything like that. But if it's not clogged up, don't attempt to take apart the motor. You won't be able to remove the motor from the assembly because it's like basically glued together. So you have to basically destroy it to take it out. So don't bother doing that. if you were using it and basically the brushes stopped rolling when you pulled back, like you pulled back the mechanism to go from the from the upright to the roller, and it just stops working, there's a good chance that's what happened. Is this? It actually broke the leads between the two. And again, if you want to check the easiest one first, on the back of this, you take these 4 Torx screws off right here. You can see those two and those two. You just pull this whole thing forward and then basically hold the buttons while you're doing that so the springs don't pop out. But you can just check the leads. Switches are very, very basic. They're on, they're off. So if you put a multimeter in the, right here, like in a position where you're just basically testing for sound, anytime you make connectivity between a switch, if it doesn't work and you push it down, and it basically doesn't make any sound when you push the leads. If it makes sounds like that, that means they're connected. So basically in the off position, when the two things are connected, they won't make any sound. But when you push the switch, it'll connect those two things, and you should do that. So if you check your relay and all those different types of things, but realistically, I just wasn't getting anything out of that. What made me think that there was a busted wire is that the rollers actually spun really quickly for like a split second and then stopped again. And that usually is indicative of a short, not a switch or a relay or something. Once they go bad, they're done, they're toast. But broken wire, as you can see, it can happen. So I'm going to go ahead and solder this thing, get it back up, and show you back in assembly. So as I soldered this back, the original problem that I just noticed that when I put this thing back into the slot right here, that's how it's supposed to go. Some of those little grooves right there that just slides out, and that's what holds it in place. But the problem is, when I extend this, you can see how tight that gets. There's no room, and that's why it broke in the first place. So they didn't, I mean, the grooves that hold this into place, you can't really take the wires out. So for this thing not to snap in the future, I'm going to actually have to put probably another inch of wire between those two. So I'm just going to have to put a solder here, and then just kind of ball it up and see if I can keep it out of the way. Maybe put it right here or something like that. Give it a little bit of play. But that's the reason that it broke in the first place. It got caught up on something. I don't know if that's an issue or not, but it looks like it's kind of melted or something like that. It's a little strange. Maybe it was from electrical burning or something like that. I don't know. It's very weird. But this is definitely not going to work, even though that I tried to pull a little bit of the extra wire from the slack right here and give it that. It just doesn't allow it, and I can't remove this to be able to work on it. So I'm just going to have to splice both those wires, put about an inch of extra cable on there, try to match it with the same gauge. I've got a lot of different wires because I do a lot of guitar repairs and all that kind of jazz. So I should be able to put this on there fairly easy and get it all back up and running. But don't put this back without testing the length. Even if you solder together, I had to pull a little bit of the wire off just so I can put that there, but that was enough for it to not just, I mean, you can see it's just a little tiny bit of slack, but just that enough doesn't allow for this thing to work, because as soon as I'd start doing it again, it would just rip the cable off, and I'd have to take the whole thing apart again. So just be aware of that when you do that. And that is much better. So I had to extend it about an inch to be able to put it down here. Slide it back down into these little grooves. Get over this thing first. Okay, so now it's on there. Now you can see it's going to have all the freedom it needs to get in there, all the way back to the full extended position. So I don't see how it's ever going to fail again. The wires are just super, super short from the factory. Hopefully this won't be any kind of an issue or something like that, but I'll just basically tape these things together. But I think that'll do it. I'll test it again after I get it all reassembled, and we'll see if it works. So in reverse order, there's the 2 black Torx screws, and then these silver 4 Torx screws. They all were the same size bit for the Torx. So that's the one that I used to get into those, and like I said, I had to use something that could get further into that. It didn't have such a large nub on the end. But either way, so the next thing we're going to do is put back this cover. And this should be a fairly quick repair at this point, because it's really only this. There's 3 holes for that. I guess there are those 3. So they go up there like this. Okay, yeah, it's hard to, okay, there it goes. It just clicked into place, so sorry about that. But yeah, you got this, and this, and those are these guys right here. So this is, if you know which screws to take off, it's probably a 15-minute repair. I mean, obviously, you got to solder and do what you got to do, but once you get these things back together, it will fit perfect. And I do like this vacuum. I mean, it's by far the best vacuum I've ever owned. I've had a whole bunch of ones that, just had the belts and they just failed eventually and they just lost suction. They were bag driven and all this kind of stuff. This thing's just really easy to clean. It's got great filters on it. So there you go. Power. Push the button. So, after you test the switches, that's definitely the fastest way to, when you pull this hose off, get that piece off, taking this off. That's the simplest way to confirm if you've got at least a multimeter. That's going to be the fastest way to confirm it's not a switch, because that's the more difficult repair by far. But it's not that bad. It's about, it's about taking this thing off and then spending about, 20 minutes, maybe. You've definitely got to have some soldering skills. You got to have some wire, flux, soldering iron. So maybe something's a little over your head, but if you do have a buddy that's pretty good with electronics and just fixing some simple stuff, it was just a bad wire. But it should not be a big problem anymore for me, but I now know how to fix that. So hopefully this helps, because there wasn't a lot of help on YouTube about that particular fix. So if this works, help me by subscribing. Thanks, man.